right, let's do it live on a Tuesday edition of the program. Welcome into Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. And I got to be real honest with you people. I'd rather not be doing this show today.
I would rather be in the great
75.
outdoors.
There are no clouds.
No.
There's a couple cumulonimbus, but they're so
tremendous
sparse
draft.
that it's all out there for you. I mean, you can really get out there and live right now. It's fantastic. What a time in Northeast Ohio.
It really is, and it's a again this we were talking about it before the show. I'm gonna say enough with this daylight, enough of falling back. We have days like this in November, so that we can utilize the sunlight till 6. Now it's dark at 5. No, wrong. Who cares about it being sunny at 6 in the morning? What does that matter? If you're up at 6 in the morning,
no one needs it.
Nobody needs it. If you're that motivated, you're gonna do whatever you need, irrespective of sunlight. But those of us on the back end of the day certainly want that sunlight. And
yes, we do.
And
as I'm go ahead.
It hurts people with young kids. It's hard enough having young kids. Then you throw it back, and all of a sudden the sun's up at 6. So they're like, wait a second, I should be up. It's chaos. Who's benefiting from this?
It is chaos.
Nobody benefits.
No one. I don't think anybody does. I'm sure people will tell us some people that do, but I don't. I reject any of it. It's interesting. I have the ESPN Plus up, and I'm watching. Tiger has a presser at the Masters right now, and they're playing. They're doing some practice rounds. He was on the range and so forth, and they had some of the setups at Augusta as this is Masters week, and you see basically what it is the course looks exactly the same. The difference is there's no real flowers to speak of. So even on the set, the flowers are more like plants that are turning green to orange rather than the normal color pops that you would see. And you see flecks of orange in the trees, and that's really the difference in the thing. But other than that, the course looks spectacular. It's just more green and less of those violets and purples and pinks that you're used to seeing.
It's beautiful. It's the prettiest green carpet in the world.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It really is flawless. It's an all-timer, certainly. As we get into the Ohio Business Machines Hot Topics, OBM, preferred copy provider of your Cleveland Browns. Have all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Couple of updates from Monday's workout. Jack Conklin was excused from yesterday. He will be back tomorrow. So that was something we were very curious about, and you'll hear from Coach Stefanski a little bit later on in the show. Joel Bitonio on the bike dealing with an elbow issue, but it's Joel Bitonio, so he will play. Everyone else, they'll see how it works on Wednesday when we get guys back in the building. But Teller back out there, Phillips back out there, and Nick Chubb back out there from an offensive standpoint. So all of those very, very positive things.
These are huge things. Huge. So it was as good of a news day as you could have. You know Bitonio will be out there. Yeah. You know J.C. Treader is going to be out there. Conklin, it's excused. He's going to be out there. You're going to have your offensive line together. Nick Chubb is back. Hooper is back. Jacob Phillips is back. Miles looked good. Remember, there was a little concern. Miles did not look great the rest of that game against the Raiders. So to have him looking good again and being able to practice on a Monday is an excellent sign. And I think, frankly, for the Browns, that was as good of a news day as you could have under the circumstances. And so now it's about getting those guys back in the mix and getting it going. I believe this 2-game homestand right here and the Jacksonville game, you go 3-0, you're in the playoffs. You go 2-1, you're right on track. You go 1-2, problems have arisen.
Well, huge problems at 1 and 2, and I think 2 and 1 is almost a minimum requirement over the next 3. I really do. I think but really the very, very minimum. And then you're still, because of that loss to Oakland, you really are going to rely on others to get beat down the stretch. And Miami's schedule is pretty easy down the stretch as well, as they sit at 5-3, and their schedule is very manageable going forward. So, and ours is too. I mean, there's 5 games on the schedule we'll be favored in, I would imagine. There's 3 we won't be. And so if we just take care of our business, I don't see any of those there's none of those 5 that we wouldn't be favored in.
No,
Philly
we'll be favored at home.
Outside chance.
Home against the Texans. We'll be favored at home against the
Philly,
Eagles. On the road.
Jacksonville, and
then on the road in New York. So 3 of your 5 are on the, 3 of your 5 are on the road, which is, that your favorites.
You'll still be road favorites.
Sure. You will be home dogs, though, in 2 of your remaining 4, which are obviously the 2 against the Ravens and the Steelers, and now that's fine, right?
Yeah.
That's totally okay. But you're right. You need to overcome it. And the thing is, it's mental. And in some ways, you mentioned the Dolphins schedule. We went through it yesterday. The Dolphins schedule, the next 4, pretty manageable. Now, the Chargers are frisky. The Broncos can be frisky at the Jets versus the Bengals. So there are some teams that can be frisky, but they finish Chiefs, Patriots, Raiders.
With. So you will be very curious. I know Kevin Stefanski talked about the self-scouting through 8 games. What did that reveal? What did that reveal is a critical thing as we start to fix some of the issues we had in the first half that we had those issues, amidst a 5-3 record. So there are things that you're winning and you're learning while winning, which is a good thing.
It's a huge thing. I can tell you the number one priority in the entire self-scout, offense, defense, special teams, all of it, getting off the field on 3rd and 4th down. You've allowed 61 conversions on 3rd and 4th down, 3rd most in the NFL. You cannot continue to play that way. You look at your last 2 losses, Pittsburgh and the Raiders. You trailed in time of possession in those 2 games by nearly 24 minutes combined. You cannot win under those circumstances. Can't do it. And you did not do it. And so that, I believe, is the number one factor. You cannot count on leading the league in turnovers in the second 8-game tranche of the season. Can't do it. Those are, now you can be a team that coaches it, and the Browns do, and you can, maximize your returns there, but you cannot count on takeaways as your sole defensive strategy or counting on Myles Garrett to be superhuman. Now he is.
No.
He is, but we need to be, just do it the old-fashioned way. Now we're forcing a lot of 3rd downs, which is good. The problem is we are not getting off the field on 3rd downs, and Deshaun Watson is going to present a host of problems on 3rd downs. He has the highest propensity to scramble on a drop back of any quarterback in the NFL. They don't necessarily do designed runs for him, but he will scramble. He's picked up more 1st downs than any quarterback not named Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, and believe it or not, Carson Wentz. And most of them have come on 3rd downs. It's not like they're running a lot of sneaks with him. He is dangerous. They're throwing the ball at incredibly high level, incredibly high. When we get into the previews, I'm working on the written word for Mr. Whitman right now. Stunning how effective they are throwing the football. And really, it's been the last 3 games, Watson's averaging about 320 with 8 touchdowns, no picks. He's been great. Fuller scored.
No run game.
No run game. They're last in the NFL. They are last in the NFL in rushing yards, and they have a quarterback who's rushed for nearly 200. They've rushed for 700 yards as a team this season. They have 1 run of 20 yards. They have 0 runs of 40 yards. They are the worst rushing team in the NFL. They're averaging under 4 yards a carry, and that's with Deshaun Watson averaging 5 yards a carry. Dreadful.
Just for perspective, folks, on what he has done, and the record isn't there, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But in the last 5 games, he has a quarterback rating. The lowest he has in the last 5 is 109. That was last week against Jacksonville. It's 110.7 on 70% completion percentage against Pittsburgh. It's 110.7 on 60% against Minnesota. Most of these are well over 4 of these are over 300 yards passing. It's 71 completion percentage against Jacksonville and 109. It's 138.9 and 75%, 4 touchdowns, 335 against Tennessee. It's 75%, 309, 2 touchdowns, 114 against Green Bay, and then the 109 and 280 last week on 60%. Last week was really his worst game of the bunch against Jacksonville to win, but against the best teams, he's played lights out.
Bo, he is currently on pace to throw for 4,752 yards, 34 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Ranks 2nd in the NFL in yards per attempt at 8.8. 4th with 32 pass plays of 20-plus. He's thrown multiple touchdowns in 6 straight games. And as you mentioned, these are career numbers for him. Career high in completion percentage, 68.3. Career high in yards per attempt, 8.8. Career high touchdown to interception ratio, 17-5, which is basically, for those keeping score at home, is 3.4 to 1. Quarterback rating, 110. He's playing phenomenal football, period.
Yep, he is. And so the hands will be full, certainly, by the time we get to that game on Sunday. Did you watch last night at all?
So I watched intermittently. I watched pieces of it. I was in a game. The Miz was ahead by 1.5 points going against James White, which you in a half PPR, that should be a lock. White catches like a 4-yard pass on the first drive, so there's 0.9, so now we're sitting pretty. Then they give him a carry, -4 yards, and loses a fumble. So I'm like, this guy's not even going to score 1.5. Are you serious? The last drive, he ended up catching like 4 passes on the last drive. I spoke to the TV. I said, we need a touchdown at time. We need a quick 3 and out, and then they'll put White in at the end, and he'll catch some checkdowns. Boom, worked out. The Jets absolutely threw that game. You can't tell me you can't convince me otherwise.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
The 12 guys on the field, not an accident.
Hey.
That's right.
What are you doing, you idiots?
Right.
If we lose, we're tied with Jacksonville. Why do you think we're doing all this? Why do you think you're still the head coach? What do you think this is about?
I will say my big takeaway from the game was, A, they obviously wanted to lose. B, what becomes of Sam Darnold? C, boy, I wish we had snagged Rashad Perriman at the trade deadline.
Yeah, he can still get deep, can he?
He can still get deep, and
Baker, he had a connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on that front. On the other two fronts, very clearly they wanted to lose. Sam Darnold very clearly will be traded. I don't know what the value is on that, but I think based on the way Ryan Tannehill has played, I think it is very, very, very smart to look and say, I don't think it's that kid's fault, that it's not his fault, that some smart team is going to be able to get him on the scrap heap and be able to get him, for next to nothing. And I still think he's a pretty talented football player. He's been banged up a lot, obviously, but I still think he's a pretty talented football player. The other thing that I thought of in watching the game, because I agree with you, there's no way the Jets wanted to win the game, is I couldn't help but think that the NFL, as more and more teams are aware of asset accumulation, that the NFL needs to move to some sort of draft lottery system. And for the NFL, with the NFL Network and everything else, they would benefit tremendously. Can you imagine if there was an NFL draft lottery for Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields?
Yeah. So
you saw what Orlovsky said about Orlovsky today said about Fields. He's a combination of Randall Cunningham, Matt Ryan, and who was the other one? Cam Newton. So if Lawrence goes 1 and Fields is number 2, you do a draft lottery on NFL Network on a Tuesday. You think that's not gonna have some interest among the teams at the bottom? To me, the idea that the Jets, because you're the worst, you get the best, I don't know. Clearly, we're at a stage where there are teams that are leaning into the tank, and I think the NFL needs to think about doing something to try to curb that a little bit.
And we started it. Let's be honest about it.
I'm aware.
We started it, and it was smart at the time, taking advantage of an inefficiency in the system.
It still is.
It still is smart, but you're seeing a lot of people, and I think you're right. There needs to be. You can't have just the absolute guaranteed reward for a terrible product. And now it's not every year, though. It's not every year that there will be a Lawrence or there will be a Fields. But it seems like there are.
Every year,
it does feel like there's somebody pretty good every year.
Right. Burrow last year. It's not, and it's also the counter I would say to that is it's not every year that there's a Zion, and the NBA still does it.
Right.
Really, the only draft that shouldn't be is probably baseball, because who the heck knows?
Sure.
You pick a guy number 1, you won't see him for 4 years. But in the NBA, NHL, and certainly I'm thinking in the NFL, they need to get to a point with some sort of a weighted lottery system.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think that's there. I just think people would be so skeptical of Roger Goodell. I feel like just the public in general, ping pong balling the number 1 pick. There's so
nobody in this country trusts anything anymore.
Well, fine, but
there has to be integrity at some point.
But that's what
the NBA pulls it off.
Think about the NBA lottery.
There's no way you wanted Zion Williamson in New Orleans. No way.
That's fine.
There's no way you wanted Ja Morant in Memphis.
You wanted LeBron to stay here. You wanted Patrick Ewing in New York.
There are a couple of those. Both of those teams were the worst, so they had the most lottery balls in those circumstances. But there's a lot of circumstances where you put teams in. I mean, there's no way the NBA wanted us to have all those number 1 picks with Wiggins and Kyrie and all of that. We already had LeBron once. Why would the NBA want a dynasty here?
Who's the guy that we drafted?
Oh, the kid from UNLV, Anthony Bennett.
Yeah, the Canadian kid. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, you had all those ones that it's just, you have to trust the random ping pong balls.
So do you think,
I don't know. I'll be curious.
What do you think that is something that the NFL is entertaining. I've seen a lot of talk about it recently.
I think you have to. Look, we started the trend, to your point. Acknowledge it, own it. We started the trend. It was a smart trend. It netted you back-to-back number one picks, and you got to draft a franchise defensive end and a franchise quarterback. That's the objective. Now you think about, so that's a win. So you suffer through a little, and it was bad. I wasn't doing the show at that time. You can speak to it. It's awful. But the reward is that we're a team that is 5-3 in part because of those assets, in large part because of those assets. And guess what? New York has $100 million potentially in open cap, and they're going to get Trevor Lawrence. That's worth it for them. That's worth it. It's worth it for Jacksonville to have multiple ones. It's worth it.
Of course.
They were in the AFC Championship game 3 years ago.
Yep. Now you've just walked it all back, peeled the layers off, and that's what you got to try to do sometimes in the NFL. And speaking of trends that were started in Cleveland that people are trying to claim as their own.
Yep.
Very disturbing news coming out of Pittsburgh. Very disturbing. Everybody knows we're the world's team. Now,
the world knows it.
The world knows it. T-shirts.
There are
T-shirts.
There's T-shirts.
There are T-shirts that say it, so it is so. World's team, not to mention number one in terms of worldwide fan bases, and the Browns back are the largest fan organization in the world as well. But the Browns are the world's team. You're welcome. You cannot, just because you're going, we're 8-0. Great. Just because you're 8-0 doesn't mean you can all of a sudden declare yourself the world's team. You're not.
I'll be damned if I'm going to stand here.
I'm not going to stand for it. I wish Ben was right here. I can't talk to him now. I think he's, unfortunately for them, I think he's ended up on the list. He just made the list.
Yep.
So we can't talk to him. But the fact that our Twitter army has really come to the defense makes me proud. Mike Florio's probably like, what? Why am I getting so many tweets about the Browns being the world's team? Listen, Florio, it's what it is. We are the world's team. And we'll earn that moniker when we're world champions again. But for now, you can't just go steal it. You're not the world's team.
No, that's
sure,
not
the
it.
Cowboys are America's team. Pittsburgh, you're the terrible towels team. We, the Cleveland Browns, are the world's team.
We, Goose. That's right. We are the world's team. Once T-shirts are printed, that's
over.
There's nothing else. T-shirts have been made and printed, various varieties.
He could be like the world's team with an A, like McDowell's, the Golden Arcs. But he can't. He can't be the world's team. That's us.
What was the name of the poor guy with the Jerry curl who she dropped? Eric LaSalle's the actor. Right. What's the name of the? Why am I blanking on the name of the? Darren. Is it Derek? Darren.
Carry on. We'll find it. He's from the heir of the Soul Glow fortune.
He was the heir of the Soul Glow fortune. Yeah, that was right.
Eric LaSalle's the actor.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, this is not.
She drops him quick.
Oh, so fast. Because why? And why wouldn't she? Daryl Jenks.
Daryl Jenks.
Oh, Daryl Jenks. Yes. Speaking of Jenks, he just strolled by and just
talk to me.
It was just an infusion of
Senior
electricity.
Swag.
Yes, Senior Swag came in. He had shades on. His future is so bright. Shades indoors. He had this
aviators.
A great-looking little kind of thin, a summery fashion coat over his shirt. He was just. It was. He walked in.
Coat. Was it a shirt? Is it a coat? Is it a jacket? We don't know. Was it one of those?
I felt like I knew. I felt like this time I was sure that it was an outer layer. But
was are we talking aviators?
Strolled in. They had kind of, it looked like, to me, a little bit of a brown on the lens. Oh, God. Just, that guy. It was spectacular. The hair was well coiffed.
Does he still have the flow?
Still flowing. Very much flowing. The flow is on.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean,
unbelievable thing.
The stride, it was like, we're back. That's what I felt like. Bye week's over. Now we're back.
Let's go.
Now it's official.
Yeah.
World's team.
All right. That's exactly right. T-shirts have been printed, and so it is so. Lots to get to. Going to have a little fun with a little better or worse in the sweet spot. You have that to look forward to. Our good buddy Doug Lesmerises, Cleveland.com, will join us at 2 o'clock for Perspective. Wrote an interesting story today at Cleveland.com and in the Plain Dealer. We will have that for you. Coming up next, we go around the league. Off and running here on a Tuesday. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If your Social Security benefits have been denied, call the disability lawyers at 1-800-ELK-OHIO. Elk & Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. All right, time to go around the league. We touched on this briefly in the first segment. The Steelers putting 4 players, including Big Ben, on the reserve COVID-19 list after being deemed high-risk close contacts with tight end Vance McDonald, who returned a positive test for the virus on Monday. The thing that is pretty dicey right now in terms of the way the NFL is handling this, and we saw this with Stafford. So you're put on the list because you have close contact, not necessarily because you have a positive test, but rather because you have close contact.
Correct.
And then you got to have the negative test, 3 negative tests, to be able to get off of it.
Right.
And what we're seeing, and we've seen this with around the sport, is we're seeing the false positives. So you're being in some instances you get a false positive, and then you got to do the 3 negatives. You're punished for the false positive.
Certainly the 49ers were a couple of weeks ago. The tough part about it is now, you're getting guys who are playing without practicing. And clearly, people are able to do that, and Ben would be somebody who would be able to do that. But it's tough, but it's just the reality of the year this year. It's the reality of playing in a COVID league. And Vance McDonald's the first Steelers player this season to have a positive test. It really is tough, and I think, you're seeing, and it's interesting that now 3 weeks in a row, Matt Stafford, or I guess it's 2 weeks in a row, Matt Stafford went a whole week without practicing playing. Ben did it. Now Baker could be back on Wednesday for the Browns,
right.
But Baker missed a practice, and had it been a game week, I think he would have missed that game.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because it came out on a Saturday,
right? That's the way it seems.
Yeah.
It seems like, yeah. So, you'd be in a circumstance where he would have missed a game at that point. It's an imperfect system. You're doing your best you can amidst the pandemic, and there is, it's tricky from a big picture standpoint. There is good news with the vaccine. There's good news with the treatment. There's bad news in terms of hospitalizations and positive tests, which could keep going up and up and up, and you feel like they will as we get more into cold and flu season. But there are some positive signs with the vaccine. But, of course, we're so far away from that. I mean, that's going to go to first responders first. And from what I was hearing this morning, that could come as early as the end of this year where you could get that vaccine. But that vaccine has to be kept at minus 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So for the delivery of it is going to be tricky for hospitals, and doing it amidst, a rush of COVID patients is going to be tough. So the idea that a vaccine is going to save us, this year, not likely. In terms of just how long it'll take to roll it out. But there's good news on the treatment standpoint, and so there is some positive signs there, and this is just the price you pay. And the NFL finished its 9th week last week. We are now past the halfway point. We reached the exact halfway point of the season during the middle of Sunday's afternoon games. So once those early games were played, you reached the halfway point, so now you're through that, and now you enter the back half of the season, and you haven't had wide disruption. You've had, certainly some things that are maybe not the way that you had planned it, but you have not had wide disruption of the league. So those are some positives,
right.
And we'll see what happens with Pittsburgh. They play the Bengals this weekend. Of course, Ben has missed an entire week of practice before and been able to come back. He had that game with Landry Jones where he was supposed to start. That was against us, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was against us.
Where he missed the whole week, and they were going to go with Landry Jones, and he got hurt, and then Ben went in and did what Ben does.
Don't remind us. I believe he threw for 466 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Was it 4?
And he threw for another 800 yards of pass interference penalties. We decided that game to play them. It seemed like we were playing cover 0 the entire game with cornerbacks that were not up to the task against their wide receivers. That was
Antonio Brown was able to get deep.
An absolute debacle. I won't even say that might have been Gibbe. Was that back Martavis Bryant? I think that was the Martavis Bryant
would have
days.
been there at that time.
It was
Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant.
Just
the Pittsburgh Steelers did whatever they wanted to do that day.
All they do is throw deep. What do you mean? It was like playing in the street when you were a kid growing up and you had the 4 or 5 better athletes. Just go far, and I'll throw it.
I'm fairly confident they even told the Browns DBs that as they were lining up. Hey, by the way, I'm just going to run straight.
Yes.
And we couldn't do anything that day.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
So, interesting one for them as they get the Bengals this week. The Bengals coming off the bye. This is an interesting number from Gibby from last night's game. Joe Flacco passed Joe Montana for the most passing yards in a career. Montana now 21st all time. You know what I would say about this is that this era right now in the NFL from a passing yardage standpoint is the steroid era in baseball from a home run standpoint. You can't compare it. You can't compare it to the rest of the history of the game. Now,
No.
the difference is this is not performance enhanced, so this will continue to be this way unless the NFL were to step in and say, hey, we're not going to allow this type of, we're going to let defensive backs get physical with receivers again. We're going to let defensive ends hit quarterbacks low. They're not going to do any of those things. So there will just be more and more of this. It's just easier and easier to pass. It makes me appreciate, we've talked before about the Jerry Rice record, and the reception record, the touchdown receiving record he had in the late 80s, which was, he had the one year, wasn't it like 22 touchdown receptions?
It may have even been 26.
Something like that.
It was in the 20s.
It was really, really high, 20-something. And it makes you think about Dan Marino throwing for 5,000 yards in 1984.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be somebody throwing for 6,500 now. I mean, it's 1,000 more than anybody else was at that time. And so this is just the product of the league. I want to say Rivers passed Marino this weekend.
It's madness. It's madness. By the way, Jerry Rice, it was 22 that year. He led the league in touchdown receptions 6 times, 6 out of 8 years, and led the league in receiving yards 6 times as well. That's dominance. That is separating yourself from the pack over the course of a decade. You have to. These stats mean nothing. You look at the highest single season passing, it's all modern, except for with the exception of that Marino year. It changes the game. I mean, if, for example, the stats that I just gave about Deshaun Watson, he's not even in the discussion of being the best. Nobody even mentions the season he's having. They're 2-6, and he's on pace to complete 68% of his passes, throw for almost 40 touchdowns with 10 interceptions, and nearly 5,000 yards. And he is run-of-the-mill this year.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, Mahomes is 25-1 touchdown to interception. You can't put it into context. There's no.
The previous record was set last year. Russ 22-1. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All these things are happening now. What's interesting is that you're not seeing. You don't really have a ton of super stud receivers this year. Devontae Adams, when healthy, has been a super stud receiver, but you haven't had the one guy.
That's a good point.
Who are dominating?
Like Julio,
the ball is being
Calvin
spread
Johnson.
around all over the place.
Yeah, it's designed to have 4 guys in routes on every play and throw to the open guy.
Yep.
Rather than here's a one-on-one matchup with Julio or Calvin or Randy or Jerry Rice. Let's really work Jerry Rice. Let's really work Randy Moss. Like, that's not the way the game is played.
No.
It's not played that way now. So
it's not. And
it's pretty wild.
The other thing that I found stunning is I don't know if you've seen the rushing leaders in the NFL. I
have not looked at that. Cook would be number 1, right?
You've got Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry both above 850 yards, and Cook's missed a game, but he's just been ridiculous. Third place is 300 yards behind those two. They're in the 850s. Third place is in the 550s. I believe Josh Jacobs is the third leading rusher in the NFL.
He's in the 550s. Yeah. Well, it's just an offensive explosion.
Totally.
And some of it is certainly the amount of okay, getting notes. I'm getting texts from my wife about Xboxes, getting notes from Gibbe about what to do in the next segment. Jeez, settle down, Blonde.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I'm handling all this. I got a lot going on.
She's on the Xbox, though. I get respect for that. Good.
Yeah, but she doesn't know what she's doing. Like, she's literally going physical stores.
That's not going to work.
That's not going to work.
No.
It's not how it's going to be delivered. The offense is out of control. It's become, ironically enough, Xbox Madden is what it's become. So that's the situation that it is there. This one as well, should the Browns look into newly released pass rusher Takaris McKinley? He's out of Cal, isn't he? First-round pick was released by the Falcons after he was the one who went on Twitter and said,
I thought he was from UCLA,
why haven't you traded me?
I could be wrong.
I know he's California.
Oh, Cal, yeah. No, UCLA. University of California, Los Angeles.
UCLA?
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, there you go.
Yes.
California kid. Look, he was a first-round talent. Yes, sure.
Yes.
Give him a look.
17.5 career sacks this year. He had an excellent pressure rate in his limited snaps. Yes, absolutely. Yes, we need it. He could end up being a cheap long-term solution. Familiar in a 4-3, that's what he plays. Yes, I would take a shot at him. I don't know why it didn't necessarily work out the way there that he wanted. He was not happy, and obviously the Falcons, turned down their trade requests. He made it public. But yes, absolutely. I would take a shot on him right now. I hope we get to say the Browns signed Takk McKinley. I don't know of any. Obviously, that was some kind of off-the-field issue, you could call it there, but I hadn't heard of anything about it. Now, let's not forget, they did decline his option. 2019, his last full season, 13 starts, 3.5 sacks. Sometimes you need a change of scenery. 2018, he had 7 sacks. So I like him. There's something there that they didn't like, and, that kind of stuff makes its way around the league, clearly, because you don't just let talented young pass rushers go for no reason. I'm guessing they let Vic Beasley go. They were going to let McKinley go. They had paid Dante Fowler Jr., so maybe that's where they decided their investment was going on that defensive front. But look, the Browns have a guy here who would be well qualified to talk about what it's like to share a locker room with, a huddle with, and be in the defensive line room in Adrian Claiborne.
That's right.
Who's a respected veteran. So if Adrian Claiborne said no.
Hoop's there too.
What?
Hoop would have been there too.
Hoop would have been there as well. Claiborne's in the room.
But obviously
though.
Claiborne in the same room, right.
If Claiborne said no, that would probably carry a lot of weight. But if he said yes, then it's a no-brainer for me. Why not?
I agree. Why not? Kick the tires. All right, you will hear from Coach Kevin Stefanski coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Electric Sign Company, Northeast Ohio's largest full-service sign company, serving your clients. Yeah, you're on. Over 91 years, contact the Brilliant Electric Sign Company in Northeast Ohio's largest full-service. You can contact those experts at Brilliant Electric Sign to provide you state-of-the-art signage solutions. Going to grow your business. You can visit them at brilliantsign.com. Speaking of Brilliant, our head coach Kevin Stefanski certainly is that. Here he was yesterday after practice. Let's have a
Great
listen.
to be back on the grass. Had the bye week.
Both on.
Guys were able to go for the fresh. We spent a lot of time last week as a coaching staff pulling it apart, and I think really had a very productive week. This being a bonus day in our preparation for Houston, we're able to talk about our key learnings from the bye week, able to introduce the Texans and their scheme to the team, and then get out in the field and work to stay sharp. It was good to see Nick Chubb back out there, Wyatt Teller, obviously Austin Hooper, who was back last week, but good to see those guys out there, Jacob Phillips as well. With that, I will take any questions.
Number 24 looked pretty good from afar. How did he look? How much was he able to do?
Yeah, I was joking. He was fresh legs out there. He looks like Nick looks. He's ready to roll out there at practice. Obviously, he's chomping at the bit. He's done everything in this rehab that has been asked of him. As you can imagine, he's attacked it. So we'll see how the week unfolds here.
And then in terms of Baker, is there any kind of an update? I know you're waiting for tests and such. Are you optimistic that he'll be back on Wednesday?
Yeah, Tom, no update. I can't really get into it. We're just following all the protocols. And, in this day and age, all of our guys are doing their absolute best. And, nothing's foolproof. But we'll make sure that we just follow all the rules.
Hey, we saw Miles out there. Is he restricted or limited any, or is he pretty much over the injuries he had?
Yeah, he's in good shape. We'll see how he responds to this and how he looks Wednesday, but he looked good to me out there today.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. The self-scouting you did you find a lot of things to take out of the playbook, or what kind of things can you tell us about?
Yeah, Jeff, I can't get into too specifics, but I'll tell you, we pull it all apart, and then what happens is you get all this information from the coaching staff, from everybody, and you compile it and you talk through it, you pull it apart, and then you check the tape. And I think for us, what we tried to do is on offense, look at the run game, look at the pass game, look at us situationally, same on defense, and maybe find some areas that we're good at and why are we good at them, and make sure we protect those type of things, and then things that we're just not so good at. If it's play on offense, for instance, like you mentioned, we can throw that play out if it's not working, and there's plenty of other plays. So it's really just spend a lot of time on those 8 games. I think that's the nice part of having a bye week right in the middle, where you get a nice 8-game sample, and you can really make some determinations based on that sample.
Kevin, did your self-evaluation result in any lineup changes?
I think that we'll see, Tony, how that all shakes out over the next few days. Obviously, in terms of when you're pulling it apart, you're looking at scheme, but of course you're looking at personnel just the same. So we'll make sure that we continue to have discussions with the coaches. And as you know, and as you've seen, we play a lot of people. So we're going to be counting on a lot of guys. We're going to continue to rotate guys in there. But as it relates to specific lineup changes, we'll just see how that plays out.
Okay, and question on Hooper. I know he didn't play the last game, but he had averaged like 73 catches his last 2 years with Atlanta and 5 touchdowns, and he's on pace for like 44. Is that a reflection of your scheme and spread it out, or are you disappointed with those numbers?
Yeah, I'm in no way disappointed with the impact that Austin's made missing these last 2 games. I've said this before. Any success that we have had on offense, number 81 is heavily involved. So I think we're really excited to have him back. He's a real threat in the pass game. He's been great in the run game. So in no way am I disappointed.
Kevin, obviously it's different kind of season, crazy times. You almost feel fortunate, even though Baker's your quarterback, that he was the only player to have to go on the list because of the close contact?
Yeah, like you said, Jake, it's a different year. It's 2020, so you got to be prepared for anything. Got to be ready to adjust. We knew at some point, with everything that's going on in our country, that there's a high likelihood of something like this happening. We got to make sure that this is, doesn't happen,
30,
so to speak.
Kevin, I assume you're still in let's go 1-0 mode, but at some point, do you address the playoff picture with your team?
Yeah, Tony, I think for us, it's we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we concern ourselves with anything other than the Houston Texans, who I think are a good football.
Stand by.
I don't think it helps us to set our gaze anywhere but where we are right now. And that's a big game this Sunday in our building versus, I think, a really good football team.
You're up.
Yeah, that's the job, right? That's what they've done successfully. And that's the job for the next couple of weeks, is to try to stay out of the big picture. That's something for you and I to have fun with, and others to have fun with the big picture and the playoff picture and how dicey it's gotten or not. But for him, it's about focusing on it. And for all of, and we have talked, and we'll talk more when we get into matchups tomorrow, for all of the things that Houston does very well from a throwing the ball standpoint, some of the things that they don't do well are things that we do very well, i.e. defend the run, and they're not great at running the ball. They're pretty one-dimensional. Right. So you ought to be able to bully them around in your yard outside, and if we have some elements, you ought to be able to take advantage of that.
Now, the thing that is tough is that we would have said the exact same thing about the Raiders before they came in here, and then the Raiders went out there, and they were the bullies. We cannot let that happen. It's a team with a lot of guys, a lot of grudges, a lot of former Browns are on this Texans team. They're going to be. Can't let that happen. We've got to keep them one-dimensional, and we've got to get off the field. We've got to get after Deshaun Watson. This is a good football team. This is a dangerous football team, and if we don't play well, it's a team that's going to beat us.
I agree, and the only difference I would say is that there was, at least with the Raiders, we knew that Josh Jacobs had the potential to be a problem. Sure. I mean, he had seen that. He was off to a slow start to his season. There's nobody in their backfield that you look at and go, boy, I don't want him to start to get going a little bit. They just don't have anybody like that. So I think that's certainly a factor in it. But their high end offensively is better than the Raiders. And much like some of those earlier games, we're going to have to score.
Yes.
I mean, we're going to have to score in this game because we're going to give some up. So to me, I think it almost has to start with the 3. It's hard for me to see this game being, in the teens, certainly, maybe in the high 20s, maybe 28 gets it done, something like that. But you're going to need multiple touchdowns out of your offense in order to take care of this team. I do believe that, my friend.
Yeah, you got to play well. You got to take care of the football. You got to convert when you get down in the red zone. You got to execute. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? It's an execution business. It's an execution league, and you're going to have to execute. This is a team, for as great of the numbers that we talked about with Deshaun Watson and Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks and even Randall Cobb, all those guys, as great as their numbers are, this is a team that's 2-6 and has only beaten the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. That's the only team that they've beaten. Now, they've won 2 of their last 4. They played Jacksonville in the bookends of those last 4 games, but that's it.
Right.
So we have got to be a team that can beat them. We've got to be like one of the other 6 teams that they faced who weren't Jacksonville that they lost to. And we got to take care of our business. This is a critically important game. 6-3 is light years away from 5-4. 6-3,
sure
you're 3 games over 500. You are in tremendous, tremendous position. And the Browns need to be in that good position. That's where they need to be. It's a lot easier to say, okay, I've got to go 4-3 over the final 7 to get to 10-6 than it is to say I've got to go 5-2 over the final 7. It's totally different. I know it's one game, but it's a massively different thing. One's 1 game over 500, the other's 3 games over 500.
Yeah, no, it is. It has all of that. If you live and breathe football, you know sometimes keeping your priorities straight can be a challenge. Unfortunately, the same can be true when you gamble. If you find your gambling is affecting other parts of your life, they can help. Get tips on responsible gambling at keepitfunohio.com. It's time for us to do our Keep It Fun Ohio Lottery poll question of the week. We do it every week around this time. And as I'm watching the guys play the practice round at Augusta, where it is noticeable that there really is no color, no flowers. It's very, very green and spectacular. But there are no flowers. I noticed it. Marty Smith just had a live shot at Amen Corner, and it was most noticeable there, where normally that is, overgrown with flowers. It appears that the leaf, we were worried about leaves. I don't think that's going to be a problem. It looks like most of those trees that aren't evergreens have not turned or even begun to turn. They're still very green at this point. So I don't think that's going to be a problem in terms of leaves. Your boy DeChambeau hitting a 48-inch driver right now and swinging like a madman. That is something else watching that guy swing, buddy.
He is.
He nuked it, but he hit it about 100 yards right on that one.
He is unbelievable. I think watching him play this course is going to be so fascinating. And it's amazing because it's not like this is his first time at Augusta. It's just the first time that the Bryson DeChambeau 2.0 has played Augusta. And 2.0 is a beast.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he is. He certainly is. Which got us thinking from a poll question standpoint, because anytime this comes around, you say, boy, what would I ever do to be able to go to Augusta, let alone play Augusta? So we went highfalutin elite golf on this poll question. So this is for the privileged elite. So if you could be in the privileged elite, we settled on this one. Would you rather play Augusta National once or two of the other most exclusive clubs in this country, Pine Valley in New Jersey and Cypress Point? One round each at Pine Valley and Cypress Point, so a total of 2 rounds, or just 1 round at Augusta. Z, what would your selection be?
Augusta, easy. I've seen it.
Play the Augusta.
I know the shots. I know the history. That's the thing. Those other courses are phenomenal courses, to be sure, but you haven't seen them. You haven't seen, big
Okay,
tournaments.
so does your answer there mean that we need to amend this poll to include Pebble so that there's a third and one that you've seen, as Gibby alluded to?
That's all I'm saying.
Do we need to add Pebble to it so that there's one that you've noticed? Because Pine Valley and Cypress are exclusive, and people certainly have seen images of Cypress. There's very little of Pine Valley out there. But Pebble added 2. So if you get the Pebble Cypress double, so now you're talking 3 rounds at those places versus 1 round at Augusta. Does that change it at all for you?
It wouldn't, because the likelihood is that I'm not going to get to play any of those 3 ever. Pebble, as you pointed out to me earlier, like I could play. I could just make it happen. I make a time. I pay the money. I go out there. I can play it. So it's not adding something that's exclusive. I just think Augusta is the one iconic American course, and it's the only of the majors that is played on the same course every single year, and I want to play there.
All right, so maybe the way to do this so that it's a more – because I think most will have your response as we're doing this live on the air. I'm thinking the better way to do this, what if it is Pebble and St. Andrews or 1 round at Augusta? And you get the trips to St. Andrews and to Pebble or 1 at Augusta. Does that make it more interesting?
I've played St. Andrews twice, and it is unbelievable. It is hallowed grounds. I would call it almost a religious experience when the bagpipes were playing at the Old Course Hotel on 17. I will never go back there because I ended up birdieing 17 and 18 on my final round there. Will not be topped. I will never play there again. I have my memory. It was perfect. So still for me, the answer remains the same. And there's really nothing that you could offer from a golf world that would get me off of it, other than if you said you can play at Augusta, with people or you could play Pebble with like your dream foursome.
Yeah, I think the St. Andrews Pebble though is closer for people.
It's great
because it's 2 courses.
That's what I think. Our fan base.
You're right.
Will want the popular. I mean, those are 2 So you get 1 round at Pebble, 1 round at St. Andrews, or.
And are you flying on a private jet? Are we really stacking the deck against Augusta here? Is it a private? Are you chauffeur?
No, because you could do private jet to Augusta too. I think they'd all be. I mean, that's the way it would go. You get those trips. Okay. It's all private jet. As I said, it's a highfalutin poll. So you'll go Scotland and St. Andrews and Pebble, or 1 round at Augusta. Acknowledging that you can play both Augusta and St. Andrews if you have the means. Anybody can play them.
Pebble.
Okay, that's it then. That's the way to do it. Gibby had this right. You had it right.
I'm going
right.
Augusta.
You also helped by the fact that you've played St. Andrews.
Fact. Although my favorite St. Andrews was, as I said, unbelievable in a religious experience. My favorite course over there was actually Turnberry, because I just thought it was spectacular. Yeah.
And the ownership over there has done a fantastic job. All right, so get your poll question out there.
Kingsbarn's also very good.
Get your poll question out there, Gibby. Doug Lavery's coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Runs Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Are you a sports fan looking for a part-time weekend job? Get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of your Cleveland Browns. Wes is now hiring for part-time event staff and security. You can apply online at weshiring.com. With that, we head out on the fifth third money line. Talk to our good buddy Doug Lesmerises, Cleveland.com, about the Browns as we approach the second half of the season. Doug, thanks so much for taking the time. And your view of this team at this moment in time and what is to come as we start to embark on the second half with Deshaun Watson and Houston coming in, and then, of course, that trip to Philly. An interesting column you wrote at Cleveland.com this morning about those two quarterbacks. Is that really where this whole thing starts?
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, I think you can see the three likely playoff teams they have left in the second half. I think you see the Jets, Giants, and Jaguars as not so good. But first you have the Texans and the Eagles, who are in between, and they have to win these in-between games. It's winning time, and I think it is fascinating. We know Browns fans, I think, love to think about what ifs, and I think part of the Browns getting good is you don't have to live in that world anymore. But Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz are two guys that were there for the taking if the Browns wanted to draft them, and now they have to beat those two quarterbacks, but not the quarterbacks. They have to beat the teams that those quarterbacks are on. They have to beat them to get where they want to go. So I think it is fascinating to think about franchise quarterback, how you build a roster and a structure around that quarterback. Because Watson right now is a great example of you'd love to have that quarterback, but at the moment his team isn't very good.
Yeah, you talk about Deshaun Watson on pace for, over 4,700 yards, 68% completions, 8.8 yards per attempt, second in the league, 17 touchdowns, 5 picks, and yet they are 2-6, which is a stunning thing. And the Browns, you would say, are so much better around their quarterback than right now the Texans are. So it makes for an interesting matchup. But I think your point is valid, Doug. Not only the what if, not only the fact the Browns could have just stayed put at 12 and drafted Deshaun Watson. They ended up trading that pick to the Texans. It was used for Watson. But this is I think it's a critical game. 6-3 is so different than 5-4. And so far, Kevin Stefanski's team has shown the ability to be resilient. They have not lost back-to-back games all year, which I think has been important to their success.
And, I give the Browns kind of a pass on the Raiders game because sometimes you just lose a game and you just lost. Like, there's not a lot more to it. They had a lot of guys hurt. The weather was weird, that kind of stuff. But it kind of cost you your wiggle room a little bit, right? And so now this is again, Houston, they're a weird team. They're 2-6, but again, they have a couple dudes. But you've got to win this one. But I also think it makes a lot of sense for the Browns, I think, to start playing their best football, even without OBJ, and that's a huge loss. But I think the idea of Nick Chubb back, I think the full run game combined now with Baker Mayfield getting more comfortable in Kevin Stefanski's system, I think it's possible that there's a jump out there for this offense to make. But you can't maybe do it. You have to do it, and you have to do it starting Sunday.
Yes, you do. You're going to have to score points to beat this Texas team, Doug. And what, in your mind, what is that version of this offense? When you said they can take that leap, what does it look like to you?
I think it's the play action being even more effective. And I know this is great, but you don't have to run the ball great for play action to work. But I think everything that Kevin Stefanski wants Baker to do, I think we've seen Baker get more and more comfortable in it. But the run game, the last 4 games without Chubb, wasn't as good as it was at the beginning. So when you have 2 Pro Bowl level running backs and you have a fully healthy offensive line, that run game can be so dominating. But I feel like while that run game was dominating early, it was like out of necessity a little bit because Baker was still kind of coming along. So if Baker can be a little more like that, back 2/3 of the Bengals game, Baker Mayfield, and now you add in Nick Chubb and Wyatt Teller, I think you're getting toward the best of both worlds in that a fantastic running game lifting the level of a quarterback who continues to adapt to what his new head coach wants him to do.
Doug, we're halfway in. We had a full offseason of Andrew Berry. We're halfway in of Kevin Stefanski's first season. Nathan and I very impressed with them. Certainly before COVID, we had a chance to know them a little bit and loved the plan in free agency and through the draft and following through on that. I think you saw that even at the trade deadline in the sense of we're not going to deviate from our big picture plan in an effort to try to add something big to this roster right now. That's not something that they wanted to do. They've been very very disciplined in their approach. From your perspective, what have you seen out of this regime with the Browns?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's a plan, and that even the things that aren't great, you can see, I think, within the structure of the plan, that when in the offseason it was, okay, well, we're going to sign Jack Conklin, we're going to sign Austin Hooper, we need help on the offensive line, we want the tight end, and our offense is going to be important. We're going to spend a first-round pick on the left tackle, and they did not spend as much on the back seven of this defense. And obviously the Grant Delpit injury was a huge thing, but that to me is like, okay, well, what's the biggest problem with this team right now? Well, it's defense overall. You're not really stopping anybody, but it's really linebacker and safety, and it feels like to me like, oh, yeah, well, they're going to get to that. That's going to be the next thing in the next offseason because, A, I think you can see the plan in place, and B, you can have a little faith that the plan's not getting blown up. And so that allows you – I would have been fine if they would have thrown a third-round pick at the trade deadline and tried to go for it because I think making the playoffs this year is a huge deal.
Sure.
So I was all in on that. But you also understand the idea of, yeah, like nobody's going anywhere. You can think a little more long-term, and then as Andrew Berry says every time, you're balancing the present with the future, and the present looks pretty good, but you can also see the future.
You can. I think that's an excellent point. You think about this defense, your third-round pick at linebacker, and really they kind of put together a hodgepodge unit with some young guys they were hoping to step up. Jacob Phillips has missed time. Mack missed time at the beginning. Safety, you mentioned Delpit should have been there. And up front, Andrew Billings opting out, I still think was a pretty big deal, even though it was one that we haven't talked about a lot or focused on. But, Doug, this defense, to get to the playoffs, which you were saying is important, I agree with you. It's got to get better on third down. And to your point, maybe at the trade deadline, you bring in personnel to help. That didn't happen. So what can this team do? And I know it was a massive focus of the team self-scout over the bye week for Joe Woods and company to get this team better on those money downs. But how do you see them improving there given what's happened?
I don't know that you do, right? I mean, more Ronnie Harrison, I think, helps.
Yep.
And when you look at his overall snap count, I mean, obviously he's playing a lot more now, but that's fairly recent. I do think Phillips is interesting at linebacker. You kind of see guys at linebacker that they might do one thing well, but they don't do everything well. Is Phillips more of an answer there if he gets healthy? I think that's certainly possible. But I think there's a degree of this of you kind of are what you are. And I think we were just talking about it on our Orange and Brown Talk podcast this week of that they haven't given up a ton of big plays.
Right.
They're actually much better in reducing the number of big plays allowed compared to last year. So actually the idea of, as bad as it was to watch the Raiders march down the field, if you make a team string a drive together, say, hey, you might score, but it's going to take 10 or 12 plays to do it, that's 12 chances for Myles Garrett to do something. So if you don't give up big plays and you think, man, Myles gets in there, you get a sack, maybe you get one strip a game, like that changes the game. I think that's what it has to be, and I know it drives people nuts to not get off the field on third down, but I think it's still better than giving up like 75-yard touchdowns all the time. So march every now and then, have Myles by himself stop a march, and then sometimes your best defense is outscoring them, and they're going to have to outscore people to get to the playoffs, and to some degree the defense, I think, is what it is.
And Doug, when you think about the task at hand, there's several, right? You're trying to make the playoffs this year, which Nathan, I agree with you, is really, really important to make the playoffs this year. That would be a major block of accomplishment for this organization to be able to check off. Beyond that, though, you want to be competitive in the long term, and you look around this division, you have the only undefeated team in football sitting in your division with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You have a reigning MVP in Baltimore with a young team that is added to their defensive line, and you've got a kid in Joe Burrow down in Cincinnati who certainly looks the part. When you think about this division and how competitive it is, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very tough, though. It's going to be a gauntlet for the next few years. It's hard for me to see it any other way. Can you?
No, and I think that's an important point to make because I think a lot of people are talking about, Cleveland.com, we're talking about it. Yeah, their schedule's pretty easy, and they have to take advantage of that because they get to play the NFC East, because they get to play the Jaguars and the Texans, and they have some winnable games. But they might be in the best division in football. One of the top two, I think, right, with this division and the NFC West.
Yes.
And, man, like, what if Cleveland was in the NFC East? It's one of those things. You can what-if yourself into oblivion, but I think you have to acknowledge what the Browns are trying to do right now, they are doing in the midst of a division with two of the very best teams in the AFC and a young rookie quarterback that gives his team a chance every time. And that is not easy. And as you said, Beau, it's not changing.
No, it is not, and you went 2-0 against that young quarterback already this year, and fortunately have banked those wins, and I think they're going to be much tougher to come by in the future against Joe Burrow and that Bengals team. And yes, this is a difficult division. It seems to always line up that way for the Browns when they get it going, but here we are. My question to you, we talked about this defense, and yes, it does seem like the philosophy is let's make them have as many plays as possible. Hope we get a turnover. Hope Myles Garrett does something superhuman. And that was a good enough philosophy. They led the league in takeaways. Myles led the league in takeaways generated by one player, and they were 5-3 in that first half. I do think at some point, though, he needs somebody on the other side. And now Vernon's healthy, Claiborne's healthy. Maybe there's something there. But what do you think about Takk McKinley? As I said earlier, I think you go ask Adrian Claiborne. He'll tell you, he was in the room with him with the Falcons for a couple of years, and he'll tell you if it's a good idea or not. But if Claiborne were to say, yeah, don't you think that's a guy the Browns should look at, a young, productive pass rusher?
For sure. I like Takk McKinley. I remember talking to him at the Combine. I liked him coming out, and it's a roll-the-dice kind of move. I do think one of the things that was one of the better stories coming out of the Raiders' loss was that Olivier Vernon showed up in that game.
Yep.
Olivier Vernon made a few plays, and I think that might be hopeful for the second half. But Claiborne, I think, hasn't played as many snaps, hasn't been on the field as much as people might have hoped. And, you wouldn't have to bring Takk McKinley in here and he's not a savior. He's a nice little bonus, a nice little plus. Sure. And the thing is, you don't know what having Myles Garrett on the other side might do for a guy. And all of a sudden, hey, no one's paying attention to you. You just do your thing. Everybody's worried about Myles. What that might open up. So I'm absolutely on board with that kind of roll the dice kind of move if the Browns could pull that off.
Doug, you're the best. Thanks so much for your time, buddy.
Thanks, fellas. Talk to you later.
All right, that's our great friend Doug Lesmerises.
Excellent.
Cleveland.com. Good story today. Yeah, he's as good as it gets. And a reminder, all guests who appear on CBD do so via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third better. Coming up next, you'll hear from Austin Hooper. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau here for my great friends at Raising Cane's, and on game day, I can't recommend enough. Go for the win. Get some Raising Cane's chicken fingers. Your guests will love it. You stack that roster. Delicious, hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce. Double up on that. Huddle up with crispy crinkle-cut fries, coleslaw, buttery Texas toast. Top it all off with freshly made tea or lemonade. The sweet tea is excellent. Raising Cane's, also a proud sponsor of the Ohio High School Association and Ohio State Athletics. Raising Cane's chicken fingers, certainly one love. All right, here was Austin Hooper, his conversation with the media from yesterday. Let's have a listen.
Hey, Austin. A lot of us know Alex Mack
Both times.
went through an appendectomy. Obviously a teammate of his in Atlanta. Did you happen to talk to him anything about it?
Oh yeah, we saw it happen. Yeah, he hit me up. He's like, "Ooh, that sucks." He's like, "What's your timeline?" He said, "He's like, we're talking. It's like, oh yeah, I came back pretty quick." But he's like, "Oh, I also don't get tackled in the internal organ area either, so you might be out like a little longer than I was." But yeah, he said same thing, just super random. Was getting ready to go to work just like me, and then plot twist, you're headed to the ER for something completely out of your control. So definitely happy and grateful to be back here with my teammates on the field.
Austin, how would you assess your first 6 games anyway, and where the Browns are halfway through the season?
I mean, it's always a constant grind, right? Like, feel like I can always improve on some things. Feel like they're, like all players, definitely some plays I want to have back. But for the most part, I felt like I was doing my thing for the most part. I mean, there's always stuff to improve on, always another level where you can go to. And I mean, that's my goal, just trying to be the best version of myself every time I go out there. So I know what I need to work on, and I'm ready to get rolling. I feel like that same sentiment resonates across the board with all the guys, and collectively as a unit, we've done some good things, but there's also plays we went back. We know that there's a different level we can all go to.
I know you were missing Baker today, but you guys got a couple back, yourself and Nick and Wyatt. How good is it just to have most of the offense back intact?
Yeah, I mean, getting your starters back on offense is always a good thing, right? So I mean, just having a guy like Wyatt, a road grader up front. I mean, first of all, I mean, shout out to Chris Hubbard and Kendall Lamb. I mean, being able to fill in, not just fill in, but ball at the level that they did. I mean, they deserve a ton of credit. But yes, it's awesome having Wyatt Teller back. Just the juice he brings, and physicality, the nastiness. I mean, definitely a guy that's a lot of fun to play with on game day while he's burying people. And Nick, obviously, one of the premier backs in this league. So I mean, it's definitely awesome to have those guys back.
Austin, what goes through your head when you hear that Baker has to go on that COVID list? Is that unsettling when you hear that about your starting quarterback?
I mean, this is a new normal, right? It kind of is what it is, unfortunately. I mean, definitely sucks. I mean, Baker's not just, my teammate, but, one of my friends as well and my neighbor. So when you see that happen, you're, definitely feel for him and his wife. But, I'm an optimistic person. I think they're going to be all right. Time will tell, right? This is a new normal.
And I'm not saying this specifically about Baker, but is it just hard for you guys, for everyone to keep their guard up for a 17-week season?
For sure, because I mean, you could be doing everything right, you know what I mean? And then you go to a restaurant, socially distancing, a waiter who doesn't know that they have it, slips their mask, coughs, forgets to wash something, touches the plate that ends up
30.
I mean, like, there are a million different ways you can get it. Someone can cough in the ventilation system who has it. Like, it's a nameless, faceless thing that's coming after you. So I mean, it's hard even when you are as precautionary as we are in this building and away from the building. It's a global pandemic, man. It's non-discriminatory.
Stand by.
Discriminatory just to the NFL. So I mean, this is something people around the world are having an issue with, not just the NFL.
You're up.
And the bye week comes at a nice time for Hoop, coming off that appendectomy, and I would think would be 100% by the time we get to the game on Sunday, and would have to figure it. We did not address. We had talked about Taywan Taylor. We talked about Cardell Hodge. Who's going to address the big chunk play? Maybe that has to come from tight end in some way, whether it's the Chief or Hoop or somebody. There's got to be somebody who can get deep down the middle of the field in the seam and create some of those mismatches that the offense needs, and maybe it is from that position. We know he's going to help in the run game with him coming back.
He's going to help in the run game. He's going to help on third downs. He catches everything that's thrown his direction. He does everything the right way, and his loss was a big one to this offense. I really believe that it was, especially in a game where you had to run the ball like you did against the Raiders. He is incredibly helpful in that regard, and so getting him back is huge. Can you just listen to Kevin Stefanski talk about it? Kevin Stefanski was absolutely pumped to get Austin Hooper back. He loves Austin Hooper. Then you're going to get Wyatt Teller, and I love when he says, you see Wyatt Teller just beating people up out there. I think, we're going to get some of our identity back. 3 key guys to our identity, Hooper, Teller, and Nick Chubb, have been gone, and they will all be back. Yeah. And I think that is massive for this stretch run. You can run the ball on this Texans team. Your best defense in this one is probably running the ball and doing to them what the Raiders did to us.
Yes. Bullying them.
Bully them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bully them.
And with Teller back, with Hooper back, with Chubb back, that ought to be the recipe, I would think. The next couple of weeks, you do the same thing to Philly, and I know we go week at a time, but the next 3 weeks, really, that should be a recipe for a lot of success for the Cleveland Browns as we chase the postseason and get the second half started in style here on Sunday at home against Houston. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family-owned and operated since 1932. They've been in business for 87 years, keeping neighborhoods clean and green. The customers, employees, and communities are all part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. Coming up next, we'll be joined by our senior staff writer, Sir Andrew, for a little bit of better or worse or sweet spot. Oh, pure
Sweet
joy coming your way
spot.
next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Both down.
Oh, lots of fun coming your way now, kids, as we head out on the Fifth Third Money Line to bring in our senior staff writer, Sir Andrew Gribble, who spent his off-season probably at some sort of five-star resort, just sprawled out, taking in the sun. How was it, Gribbs?
I didn't leave the house very much. I can tell you that. That was just as good. I mean, I don't get out of this zip code very much anymore. Too much traffic.
There you go, buddy. A staycation, if you will. That's very good out of you. All right, time for a little higher or lower or just right.
No.
Or better or worse. Or sweet spot.
That's right.
As Gibby likes to call it.
Gibby
And it's
dubbed
brought
it
to you
that
by,
2 weeks ago. He
he
gave it his
claimed
official
he
blessing.
Made it so.
That's right.
Yeah. So I guess that's what it is. We should probably change the copy.
Yeah.
It's brought to you by Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, the nation's largest medical schools, preparing future generations of physicians, pharmacists, and dentists. Oh, Gibby.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This week's Power Poll comes to us from Dan Hansis, NFL.com, his mid-season power rankings. The Browns come in right in the middle at number 15. Gribble, should they be higher, lower, or are they just right as we go into Week 10 of the NFL season?
I think it's around just right, but if I'm going to quibble with it a little bit, just the same record as the Colts. We beat the Colts. Give us the number 14 spot. That's all I'm asking.
Correct.
Zegura?
When he's right, he's right. And he's right. We're better just on that one alone. So, yes, better.
Bishop, anything
Yeah,
that hasn't already been said? Great. Good to
No,
talk to you.
it's all that. Well, fine. I won't participate, Gibby. You want to play that game with
Gibby.
me at 2:34? I always got to follow these guys anyway. I always have to go last in your little game, your little charade.
Charade.
You like it. You just said you did right before break. It's all right. Anything you would like to add about the Browns ranking?
Same.
We're going to go down that road. All right, fine.
That's
We'll
right,
play
Gibby.
that. Let's get things rolling here then. The Kansas City Chiefs come in at number 1. Obviously, they can't go any higher. Should they be lower, though? Zegura, the floor is yours.
How nice of you to start with me. I appreciate it. I always say, quoting Ric Flair, to be the man, you've got to beat the man. The Steelers should be number 1, but because they are the defending champions, they can retain on a disqualification or a countout, and thus I'm fine with them being 1. But those are the definitive top 2, Chiefs and Steelers.
Bishop.
Yeah, I think they probably have this right. I mean, I think if any of us were playing these two teams on a neutral field, I think we'd all take Kansas City. Mahomes is 25-1 touchdown to interception. I'm told that's impressive. Seems to be to me. I think that's probably a record or something. So it's just a level of play offensively. And so even when they get everybody's best shot as they did against Carolina, and I like the way Carolina played, I just think when it comes down to one game, no one's betting against that kid. You're just not.
Gribble?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs, to me, even though I know both of these teams have been great this year, I think they're the clear number 1. And I know they lost the game and the Steelers haven't, but I just like the Chiefs better, and I think I'm putting the game on Mahomes versus this version of Roethlisberger right now. I think if the Chiefs can win the way they did this past week, they're just going to be very tough to beat moving forward, and I can't bet against them.
Frankly, I would pick anybody over Pitts Puke. We move on. The Steelers are number 2 in this week's Dan Hansis NFL.com Power Poll. Number 3, it takes us to the New Orleans Saints, 6-2, and a 38-3 beating over Tampa Bay. Beau, should they be higher, lower, or are they just right?
I think they're worser than number 3 on this thing. I would drop them down a little bit. It was an impressive win. There's no question their defense really came around. You got to credit them for what they did. But there was the throw that Breeze made in the end zone, that the ball traveled about 21 yards, and he crow hopped to throw it as if it was a 70-yard bomb. Tells you how limited they are and what they can do offensively. Now, it's death by 1,000 cuts. I get it. But right now, I think Baltimore is maybe slightly better. I think Buffalo's better. And I would probably take Green Bay as well. So I would probably drop New Orleans down to that 6 line, 5-6, something like that. So they are worser.
Gribble, I'm going to let you do a little victory lap here. as Zegura's Taco Bell team went down.
It's still looking great, by the way. What do you mean? We're right on track for Taco Bell. We're already waiting in the drive-thru. Let's relax.
Ordering Mexican pizzas.
It was maybe that's why I think the Saints are worse here, because I'm just not. I'm not going to fall into the recency bias trap of them having a great, outstanding game this past Sunday. I think every team, every year, if you're a top team, plays a game like this, and the Saints played their perfect game. I just think, especially if we're doing body of work here for the first 8 weeks, we've talked about how the Saints have kind of limped through this first half of the season, not looking that impressive. I just think the Ravens and Packers right now are better teams, and I would pick them in games. Either I would pick them straight up over the Saints, and I'd probably pick both those teams to win in New Orleans right now.
Zegura?
If the defense of the Saints can play like they did last year, and this is probably the first time that they really did that, I think they would be number 3. But I'm not ready to crown them. You want to crown them, crown them. I'm not going to crown them yet. I think that they are worse than this. That means that they are, I believe in your weird thing, lower on the list, but with a higher number, so it's confusing. I'll go back to just the simple, as you dubbed it 2 weeks ago. They are worse than this, but they are very dangerous. Would not at all surprise me if they end up winning the NFC.
All right. We've only been doing this for a couple of years. Sorry that you're still not on board with this.
I'm adapting to what you said. You were definitive 2 weeks ago. You said it is better or worse.
Better or worse.
Slip of the tongue.
No, it was not a slip of the tongue. Okay. It was your tongue doesn't slip. That's what I was told.
True serum.
It does. Number 4 in the NFL.com power poll are the Baltimore Ravens. The Packers are number 5. Not buying them in that defense. Which takes us to number 6, and the Buffalo Bills at 7-2 on the football season. Should they be higher, lower, or are they just right? Gribble, the floor is yours.
You know, I've been skeptical of the Bills for the last 2 years, basically, but I think this is just right at the moment, and I think it's because they've almost flipped their identity. I'm skeptical about their defense, but their offense is explosive, and they're 7-2 with their 2 losses being against very good teams, against the Titans and the Chiefs. So they've earned this spot, and I think it's just right.
Zegura?
Boy, I got to tell you right now, I think they beat the Packers. I really do. I'm not sold on the Packers defense at all. They were dismantled a couple of weeks ago by the Minnesota Vikings. I like this Bills team. I think they're frisky. I think they are a great play with the lead team. I want to see them have a signature come from behind win. But they said, you want to play a shootout? We'll play a shootout with you, as they dominated the Seahawks in this one. I like the Bills team. I think that secondary, Tre'Davious White, Poyer, Micah Hyde, is very, very good. I like them. I think they're better. I'd put them in the top 5 right now.
Bishop.
You know that the internet GIF on social media of the 2 Spider-Men doing the thing where they
look at each other.
Yeah. Look at each other. Yeah. That's how I feel about them and the Ravens. They feel like the same team right now, and I think that's a compliment to Baltimore.
What?
I'm sorry, to Buffalo, that they're playing to that level. I think Baltimore has come back a little bit. Not in terms of the way they go about their business, but that they're both good teams when it comes to, if you get a lead, they can hold it. I think when both trail or are in shootouts where they have to come back, I think they would both struggle because, frankly, I don't know that I trust Josh Allen in a game having to come back. He's a great front runner, though. He still makes throws that you just go, my God, what are you thinking? And then the next one is on the money. So I just don't trust him all the way yet. So I think they are probably just right. I can't put them ahead of Green Bay just because of Rodgers versus Allen in that matchup.
That's where I was going to go. I just that's the only reason I don't have any confidence in Green Bay's defense, and I'm still not sure that Buffalo is everything that we all think they are.
Listen, Buffalo, the addition of Stephon Diggs was one of the great moves of this offseason. And this is the first time that I've really gotten to watch a lot of their game. I like that team. I do. And I think
they haven't looked like this since week 3, though.
Or week
been whenever it was. It's been a lot of struggle, and then this came out of nowhere. They struggled against the Jets. They have struggled to do anything in several of these games in here. But they look great on Sunday. And that's what I mean. They're a great front runner. They're like Baltimore in that aspect, that when they are going and they have rhythm, they can beat anybody, but it's not something you see every week.
I just agreed. I think that they are much better equipped to throw the football than the Ravens are. Much better.
All right, we move on. Tampa Bay comes in at number 7 after that tough loss to New Orleans. They drop a few spots.
6-3, no big deal.
6-3. Well, we'll see. At number 8, the Seattle Seahawks. 6-2. Well, first team to 50 every week. Going to win this football game, whoever they play. Should they be higher, lower, or are they just right? Zegura, the floor is yours.
I think they have a tough time with the Titans, but they can beat anybody on this list. They're a team that can beat anybody. Russ and Mahomes are the 2 best players in the NFL by a wide margin. Their defense is so bad, though. It's atrocious. It's the worst. They got Gribbs' all 40 decade team out there with Jamal Adams on the back end, and it's still bad. Defense, you got to be able to play some semblance of defense. So I'm going to say that they are worse than this because the teams that they'll have to deal with in the NFC are going to be able to score on them. So I'm going to put them at number 9. I do think they're number 9. And by the way, like I said, on any day, they can beat anybody. They can beat the Chiefs. Russ is that good.
Beau.
I'd have them better than Tampa. Their bad is shootout losses to Arizona and to Buffalo. The Bucs' bad is bad. It's annihilated by the Saints. It's
Twice.
Losing to Chicago. The Bucs have a lower floor than Seattle's floor. As bad as their defense is, and you're right, it's as bad as there is in the league. But they still have been in every game and go toe-to-toe, and I'm with you, can go toe-to-toe with anybody. But they don't have a floor like Tampa. Tampa's floor, of the teams in the top 9, Tampa's got the lowest floor.
Gribble, what do you got?
I like that.
Yeah, Beau stole my thunder in this one. I've got them better than the Bucs because I think they've got a better quarterback, and they're not losing to anyone 38-3. I mean, I just think I agree with Beau that they're just not going to be in games like that. And if I look below them with the Titans aren't stopping the Seahawks on third down. They've got one of the worst third down defenses in the league. I think I would take the Seahawks in a game over them. So I've got the Seahawks slightly better at number 7.
Up next, number 9 are the Titans at 6-2. And we go to number 10. The Las Vegas Raiders are 5-3. And they have made the top 10 in NFL.com's midseason power poll. Beau, should they be higher, lower, or are they just right?
So, like, in my heart, I think Arizona's better than them. But I don't know that Arizona's better coached than them.
Mm-mm.
And I do think the Raiders figured something out with Josh Jacobs against us, and now they've 2 weeks in a row where they've been able to really run the ball effectively. And they've been able to close out 2 games that were really important. And Arizona, and Z, I think you brought this up earlier in the week, Kingsbury does some stuff in game that is hard to wrap your head around. And you can't trust him. I can't put him up any higher than Tennessee, but I'm not dropping them below Arizona just because of what I've seen. So I think they're probably in the sweet spot.
Gribble.
Yeah, I agree with Beau. I hate doing this many sweet spots, but this is a pretty good rankings. And I just think the Raiders, as we saw, unfortunately for ourselves, they know how to win some of these games, and they've won these games in a lot of different ways, which again is a testament to the coaching that John Gruden is doing there. And I look at their offense and I see all the weapons they have. I don't even think they've tapped in to what they have offensively. I think that they're trending in the right direction. That's bad news for the Browns because the AFC is just loaded with these kind of really good teams beyond the Steelers and Chiefs.
Zegura?
Yeah, I look at this ranking and I say right now, if you made an 8-team tournament out of 10, which is the Raiders, 11 Cardinals, 12 Dolphins, 13 Rams, 14 Colts, 15 Browns, 16 Vikings, then I'm going to jump to 19 in the Falcons, and made an 8-team tournament out of there, there's nobody in the world that could correctly – I mean, somebody would ultimately say, oh, yeah, they're going to win it, but I think you got pretty even money all spread around on all 8 of those teams that come out of that thing. I just think there's a massive cluster of teams that are similar, that could beat each other on any given day, depending on a ball bounce here or there. I didn't even mention the Chargers, but they were one play away from beating the Raiders right there. They should have beaten a lot of teams that they haven't this year, blowing all those big leads. So I think that is where, after the Titans come off the list, which is they're at 9, I think the division between the top 9 and then 10 through 18 is a pretty big chasm. Of course, anybody can beat the Titans. We've seen the Bengals beat the Titans. But I do think over time, if you simulated something out 100 times, the difference between the top 9 and the next 9 is pretty big. But within that next 9, I think it's real tight. And I think right now the Raiders are moving in the right direction. Where would they be on this list if they don't run back-to-back fades at the goal line? Where would they be if the Chargers score there? Yeah. So I'm fine with where they are. But at the same time, I think anybody 10 to 18, and I'll even throw the Chargers and the Falcons, if that was a big tournament, I think it would be a fun tournament because I have no idea who's winning.
I do like that. Maybe we'll have to put that in for next week because we're up against it right now. One final one. Number 11 this week, the Arizona Cardinals, and the number 12 team, the Miami Dolphins. 5-3, Brian Flores and Tua. Boy, looking pretty good. Gribbs, should they be higher, lower, or are they just right?
I'm putting them lower. I'm just not there yet. I think it was an impressive win, and they've been really good on the road this season. I'm not there yet, and I need to see more.
Zegura.
Again, they're in that tournament. I'm fine with their ranking, and as a Browns fan who's looking for another pass rusher to complement Myles Garrett, it is making me want to gouge my eyes out watching what Emmanuel Ogbah is doing down there for the Dolphins. And good for him, having a career resurgence. And the guy that the Browns got in the Ogbah trade, Eric Murray, will be lining up against them this week for the Texans.
Bishop.
All right, and again, state school. So, the intelligence is lacking here.
No, it's not.
Did Miami, who did they play last week?
That's right, the Cardinals. Did they win in Arizona?
Where
was
the game played?
That's right. You're right.
Where was the game played?
Scottsdale.
Glendale. Close. Not really. 45 minutes. The drive's a pain.
I called Scottsdale.
Miami beat Arizona and somehow are behind them. They beat them at their place. So I realize it's semantics. It's not that big of a deal, but they have to be better than a team they beat at their place.
Just like we should be ahead of the Colts. But we're all in that group. I'd like to see this tournament right now. Forget it. These 8 teams play in for the final spots. Let's go. Stop the season right now. Tournament.
All right, good stuff there. Always good to talk to you, Gribbs.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
And a reminder, all guests who appear on Cleveland Browns Daily do so via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third bettor. One final segment. Lots to get to. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. It's awesome. It's cool. It looks cool this week, and I like how they're kind of leaning into the fall colors as well, so that'll be fun to follow that as the week goes along. Tomorrow we start to get into the matchup, us against the Texans. We will meet the Texans. A lot to look forward to there. The next level is coming up next. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Roselli, 850 ESPN Cleveland.